Alaska, Mount McKinley. Sounds beautiful, splendid, and fantastic. But it looks even better in reality. And this is exactly why me and my friend George decided to go climb McKinley again. I did it a year before, no problem, summited, was cool, but hey, let's do it one more time. However, it sounds much easier than it is done. This time, it took us 3 months of special training to be ready mentally and physically for such trip. It is a long way to drive to Alaska, but we are willing to do it. One drives, the other sleeps. 24 hours, non-stop. A slight oil leak will not bother us either. 52 hours of driving on the gravel roads with the speed over 100 miles an hour, and we are here. Hello, Mount McKinley. And now, obtain the necessary permits, and off we go. Hopefully, the weather will stay the same as on this poster. Nope, not too many changes since I climbed McKinley a year ago. Then I presented this little gift to David, my pilot. It's still here.
So how is it? Is it working?
Yeah, this is great. Been to McKinley about 1,000 times. And,
so much more than I am.
It's a great glass case.
Well, George, let's do it.
So what do you think our chances to get to the mountain?
I think you have an excellent chance. Base camp is open right now. The weather's good here. We may have to go the long way, but we'll get you up there tonight.
But whoa, the gear! Looks like our starting weight will be over 100 pounds per person. That will be physical. But that's quite alright. I've been doing this for the last 30 years. The standard Mount McKinley climb for regular person takes about 3 weeks. We want to accomplish this in just 1. And after that, we want to conquer the second summit. If you think that you could just get up in the morning, go to Alaska, and then climb Mount McKinley to the top, you are severely mistaken. This is a very serious trip, and in fact, there is more death on Mount McKinley than on Mount Everest. For me and George, after 3 months of serious physical training, this climb should be just right. We're both in top physical form, and we are ready for it mentally. But this guy's going home. How was it? I hope it'll be the same for us. Now, let the party begin. With the 60-pound sled and 40 pounds in the backpack, it's gotta be fun. The highlight of the day, though, is the view of Mount 4 Acre. It gotta be cold, but it isn't. We're sweating like pigs. The heavy load and warm weather are treacherous. Usually, climb like this takes a party of 7 or 8 people, but it's only 2 of us here, and the whole trail breaking is for 2 of us only. The enjoyment might come later, but the first thing you feel in a trip like this, it's enormous amount of work. Besides that, the sunblock, which is supposed to be waterproof, comes in your eyes, and then you can't see shit. After 11 hours of dragging sleds, it is time to call it a day. It took us 2 more hours to build a wind protective wall made out of snow and then cook something. Man, are we tired or what? Hopefully some fine buckwheat Russian porridge will give us some more strength. Next morning, the weather is horrible. Let's play chess, shall we?
Bravo.
Yes, we shall. 7 hours later, the weather did not change very much. But in Alaska, it's always light. Even though it's 7 p.m., we decided to continue with our quest. And 5 hours later, after strolling through complete blizzard and zero visibility, we reached the camp at 11,000 feet. Next morning, phew, what a relief. First off, the trail has already been broken by numerous climbers who've been stuck here under the bad weather for days. Now, all it's left is to follow the trail and look around. The weather is 100% or better. Unfortunately, as far as physicality of the trip, it's not getting any easier. If you fellows never done such a trip and want to do it right now, I strongly suggest to get in good shape. Meanwhile, the views are breathtaking. Carrying such heavy loads ain't fun anymore. But hey, we are at 14,000 feet is our next camp. Few minutes later, I see George, who climbs up between huge seracs and crevasses. Big mountains, small George. And this magnificent view one can observe from the local toilet. It is only our second day on this mountain. It's pretty high elevation. The headache is enormous. In this very spot, in the base camp of 14,000 feet of Mount McKinley, I met Sergei Arsenyev and his wife Franka, the world-class alpinists. Sergei and Franka nowadays are no longer with us. They both died on the summit of Mount Everest 3 years from this trip. Next morning, we all are up for a good acclimatization trip. Even though our plan for the future is to get up West Rib, which is way more intense route than West Buttress. Yet right now we're going up West Buttress just to feel how is it. At 16,000 feet we could clearly see our camp at 14. It's a little crowded, but the mountain is so huge that you hardly see anyone when you're coming up. Still splitting headache. We have no plans for today, just training. Locals say that this kind of weather is extreme rarity in these mountains, and this is why our ascent today is relatively easy. It is 55 degrees steep and physical, but the conditions are perfect.
Hi. Howdy.
How are you?
Very good. How are you today?
Good.
Made it to the summit?
Yep.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
In a bit, we reach the camp at 16.2. Last year, I spent 5 days in this very spot, sitting in the snow cave in -20 and huge blizzard. Today, absolutely windless, beautiful, unbelievable. And here's George. Hello! The ridge is steep and narrow, but phenomenally spectacular.
Yes, it is. What a view!
Oh yeah, it's only our third day on McKinley, and we are already at 17,000 feet. Enough for today. Next morning, 10 a.m., 3-hour break, and off we go to the West Rib route. Somewhere there. And then there. And after that, here. The weather is really good so far. So let's dry, eat, pack, and go.
But not before I do my laundry.
Fine, but do it quick. Let's take a break, shall we?
Man, it's tiring.
Don't you love it, George? But seriously, what a weather. Is it even possible? What do you say? 2 more hours and we are at 16,000 feet on West Rib. Still unbelievable scenery, but we do not stop here. We plan at least 8 more hours of ascent today. The slope is steep and dangerous, but it is exactly how we like it. Usually it is very avalanche dangerous, but the fresh snow wasn't here for at least 2 days. Yet it doesn't make it any easier physically. Under these circumstances, one wrong move and you're dead. 17,000 feet. Very tiring.
Oh yeah, but look at this.
Wow, fair enough. It's fantastic. Hard to believe that right now it's 10 p.m. We've been going for 12 hours straight. But since it's always light here, we feel no limits. At 17.8, we decide to call it a day. Only one problem though, There's not one spot to set up the tent. It took us right about 3 hours digging into the groove, or whatever at that, before we could get settled. 12 midnight, but the views are absolutely splendid and unbelievable. 50 degrees, no wind. Is it even possible at 17,000 feet in Alaska? Lots of climbers fight for their lives here daily, but not for us today. Our stuff is laying down without any protection. Hot tea and great mood are here right now. For this kind of life, gentlemen. But I guess yesterday I spoke a little too soon. Look around. -22, zero visibility, huge winds, major avalanche danger. Through the night, it had about 3 feet of fresh snow. We waited out here for about 5 hours, but the weather didn't cooperate. In fact, it's gotten worse. Despite all reasonability, we decided to go up towards the summit. But after a couple of hours, we totally gave up. Too much snow, too dangerous. Gonna go back. Late night, we descended all the way from out of the wall where the avalanche danger was out of reach. You can probably tell that the conditions are not the best. At last, we're back at 14,000 feet. Thanks God. At least we can eat now. Meanwhile, any casual observer will see vividly that the weather is not that great. I guess the best we could do now is organize the camp. But the very moment later, huge avalanche came down for the whole face and west rib where we were just climbing. If we didn't go back immediately at the point we did, this film wouldn't be in existence. 2 hours later, completely cleared up. And now, 23 years after this trip, I think very often. In mountaineering, you can lose your life in a heartbeat. 10 p.m. next day. It took us 12.5 hours to get to 17.4 and another 4 hours to build the snow cave in which we are right now. Since we did not accomplish the west trip route, we decided to take the standard one, which is West Buttress. Everything goes according to plan. Unfortunately, it is -5 in our snow cave. 2 days later, we're still here. The weather did not allow us to conquer the summit. Maybe tomorrow. Considering the fact that we don't have full acclimatization yet, we've only been here for 6 days, spending few nights in the snow cave -5 and snowy conditions is not that pleasurable. Besides, my camcorder just broke. I had to take it apart right here with a little screwdriver and little pliers, and finally I got it fixed. Next morning, we cannot believe our own eyes. The weather is beautiful again. It is really time to go up. Alright, no problem, let's do it. The only thing, for the last 3 days of the snowfall, nobody was climbing to the top. So we are the only ones to break the trail through about 2 feet of fresh powder later on. In fact, I am the only one who will need to do it. George is somewhere way back, I could hardly see him. About 3 hours before we reached the summit, the weather's got real bad again. But like you know, for the real sailor, there's no problems of any sort. Tough. Very tough. From the upper ridge, I could see the summit itself. But it is still at least an hour to get there. It's real hard. The trail breaking was abnormally bad. And yet, few moments later, my shadow, my gaiters, my crampons, and me are on the top of Mount McKinley. Second time, isn't that cool? After 4 hours of 2 feet deep trail breaking, it feels even better. And here it is George. This is the first time for him. I'm sure he loves this right now. Come on, George. Give it a push. It feels fantastic, but cold as hell. What do you say, George?
Honestly, Mike, I would love a warm beach and a cold beer right now. So, let's go back.
Alright. Oh yeah, can't agree more. 5 hours later, we're back home. if you could call this home. Still -5, still very cold. The hands, even the sleeping bag, get cold instantly. And the weather outside is gotten so bad that you could hardly take a shit without using wands. The only thing which is left to do is to play chess and get out of the cave every couple of hours, dig out the entrance, or else we wouldn't be able to get out ever. 4 days later, yes, 4 days later, we are still here. Looks like our plan to conquer the second summit is not going to work. The problem is, can we even make it down? We are almost out of food, almost out of fuel, and the reach for the way back is really narrow and dangerous in the bad weather. Next morning, seems like it is the only way we should go down right now. It is the opening in the weather, just a little bit. Second summit? Nah, maybe next time. For now, down, as soon as possible. Luckily, we've got sleds, we can use those as the descending device. And if that will not help, it's always your own butt. Use that. I wonder what George's gonna use as a steering device. And we're back at the base camp. 2 more days of blizzard. And hey, this is the end of our trip, pretty unexpectedly. The weather is nice again. I'm sure the plane will be here soon. Time flies so quickly. 10 days passed by in one blink. Let's go home, George. Sounds like a pretty good idea. 2 hours later, we're back at Talkeetna Air Taxi Bank House. Hello, friends. Too bad you are no longer with us. Sergei Arsentiev and his wife Franka died on the summit of Mount Everest in 1998. Franka was the first lady on Earth who conquered summit of Mount Everest without oxygen, and she died on the very top. Sergei was hugely in love with her all his life, and he couldn't see that happening. He stepped from the summit ridge into the abyss, and nobody saw him since. In fact, me and George could have died in this very trip. Why do I still go mountaineering? I can't answer this question.